Hey everybody, this is Ryan from Ire Uprise, and I figured I'd give you a little bit of context for this episode. So, we recorded this back in early November with Justin, and this is the sum of about a 2 hour long interview that we summed down to about an hour. We took more of a conversational approach for this interview, so there's going to be parts where it's going to jump to different topics at certain points. In the description below, there's going to be time codes for specific parts of the interview, so if there's any specific things you want to look at, you can find it there. I want to take a moment to thank Justin again for taking the time to do this, to work with us. He was a real pleasure to talk to and a great, phenomenal artist to work with, and I hope you enjoyed this interview.
All right. So thanks a lot for asking me to do this.
Yeah, of course, man. Like we really are super thankful for everything you've done for us for this entire project, and like I told you, like in some of the messages, man, like it's phenomenal, and it's like very complimentary to the music, man. Like, and I'm very curious about hearing like your process on how you tackled this like behemoth of a thing, you know?
All right. And I'll do my best to either remember what was going on or try to throw in some of the interesting thoughts or the process that was going on when I was making it. Because it was actually a while, between first chatting and then saying, okay, I've got a window, I can work on this thing, and then getting the sketches, and then getting some of the commentary or whatnot, and then it took even longer to do up some of the basic ones, and then have it go from there. So I'll try to remember some of the details about it. I think I got some cool stuff I can talk about with it. I was like, okay, I hadn't heard anything. I hadn't heard, there wasn't a track, nothing. So the only thing I had was the description in that drawing, and that was it. So I was pretty sure that it was going to be legit, and it was. The first thing I actually heard, period, was when you sent me the Google Drive link. That was like long after the artwork was done. I was just like, okay, we'll just wait and see what it sounds like. And I was pleasantly surprised. I think I found the page on Facebook just to keep in touch with you guys, but then I just went to the Messenger and I was doing most of the correspondence through there. So after I found the page, that was about it. I didn't really pursue anything else because I knew, as far as I knew, this was like the first album you're going to write. It's like, oh, okay. I'll like see if they send some tracks, right? Because that's always cool when you get some pre-prod tracks, and you can hear how a song is going to be built, the structure, and then you get a second, a third, and a fourth version. And you're like, oh man, this is like shaping up into something cool. But I didn't have anything. No, which is cool. No, that's totally cool because I had enough description, and it was that was more than enough, really. So when I finally did hear it, I think I messaged you back, and I was like, oh my god, like, I didn't have any expectations like at all. I just kind of went into it. Okay, well, whatever it turns out to be is what it is. But it took a while, so I figured, well, okay, if you guys are pretty serious about this, it's gonna sound good because I started doing that cover like a long time ago. I think was it 2018 or was it like 20? I think it was 2018.
It was 2018. It was,
Yeah.
I remember it was like September September, August.
Late 2018, I'm pretty sure we talked to
Yeah.
you for the first time.
I want to say it was August, and then September and October the ball got rolling. Sent some files and some pictures. I think so. It's been about a year. Actually.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. So, if I may ask, like, how do you often have to like make artwork and not have music to work with? And was this kind of like a different process for you in that way because of that? Like, do you think if we had sent you something would it have changed the final product, I suppose?
It's a good question. More often than not, I've got something to listen to, and I'll usually ask, and sometimes I don't, right? Sometimes people send me something and say, hey, by the way, here's the intro track. Let me know what you think. And it's always good fuel for me because, I get a feel for if it's going to be heavy symphonic, if it's going to be, straight up beat you over the head, or is it going to be more beautiful? So that can steer the direction of what the final product is going to look like. And a lot of times a track will help if there's not a lot of description. So, for example, right now I'm working on some things. There's a lot of description in the story, but no tracks. So if I have one or the other, it's pretty good. In you guys' case, I had a lot of description, so that helped. I think that if I did hear the music, I think it would have helped a little bit, but it didn't take away from anything. But it's always good. I always love to hear whatever's getting worked on, and it's not a requirement. Like, it's not in a contract. Like, you must send me, tracks, because some people don't want to do that. They kind of, they don't want to put anything out. They don't want anything to leak out or anything. But if they do, then it's always kept private. I don't send anything to anybody else. It's kind of like, oh yeah, like you hear a pre-production track and you're thinking, this is good, and then it just makes you like go at it even harder, But in you guys' case, what really helped was telling me some of the story, and I'll tell you that annotated list. It was like you already knew what you wanted, and it was described in a lot of detail, and said, okay, I remember it saying, he's in some kind of a library, old castle / medieval Gothic type kind of building. And I love that kind of stuff. I love architecture. I love architecture from different countries and time periods. So I kind of kept it open, right? Because you didn't really pin it down to a particular time period or an era or anything. So I was like, all right, I'm going to throw a whole bunch of stuff in there. So if you look at the piece, you got the doors are kind of Gothic. The space above the doors is too, but then the ceiling is more Baroque. There's in the middle, right at the top, the ceiling kind of splits in two pieces, and you have like a kind of a oval frame in the middle of the ceiling. So I got that idea from looking into one of these books that I've got over here, and that was a Baroque theme. So throughout the picture, the style changes, So you got some Gothic, you got some Baroque, you got a little bit of Renaissance thrown in there. So I wanted to kind of make a mashup of it, because I couldn't decide, okay, if somebody looks at this and says, okay, based on the architecture, it's in this time period. I didn't want them to do that, because it's supposed to be, as far as I know, it's not really in a time period. It's just, it's a mood, not necessarily something that's supposed to be historically accurate to a when and a where. So I think it worked on that note. Even the fireplace, I think I just made it up, but I looked at a shitload of fireplaces and was like, all right, well, let's go with something like this. And I didn't want to make anything in that part of the background too detailed either, because that's where the main character is. So your attention, I didn't want it to be divided up between, well, here's this guy sitting here like with this thing in his hand. Well, look at that lion's head on that fireplace. Damn. So the attention away from that and focus on the guy. So fireplace is not too detailed. But let's see, there's some other stuff in there. You got the candelabra at the top. I want to say that was something that was more medieval, castle-ish. It's not necessarily Baroque themed either, So maybe this guy was rich and he just built his own thing and he got all kind of influences from everywhere else, you know.
Yeah, I really appreciate the fact that you didn't nail it down to one time period because it makes it seem a lot more timeless in that feel, and it makes it that much more like in its own almost universe and story in a way, which I appreciate a lot. And to touch on, you were kind of talking about your use of foreground to background is like great. Like you know how to like space everything out and just like highlight those specific parts really well. Like it didn't feel like because I there's a lot of stuff on that cover, and it's just so nice that it's like easy on the eyes to look at, even though it's like so compact. You know.
So thank you. I appreciate that. I have to credit one of my old college professors with that because she used to tell me I do drawings and everything. She says, you need to put some space in there, you know? So you can have a crowded drawing, but then you're not, your attention is not focused on a particular element of the piece. You know, if it's all over the place, it doesn't work for illustration in my experience, because when you illustrate something, you're giving an idea of visual. So, you know, in a lot of album art cases, there's the name of the band, and then you've got the name of the album. So the name of the album, you know, once you look at the piece, it should all come together when you look at it. So you can't have everything going on. You got to try to angles and background, foreground, have a main thematic point. And in Penumbra, it's the hand, obviously. You know, it's the one thing that is disrupting the room. It's casting the light. I think it's the biggest single object in the piece, and everything sort of points to that if you follow the lines and, you know, the action, so to speak. So I wanted to make sure that the two main focal points were the hand and the man holding the orb. So the man holding the orb is a real kind of crisp character, as opposed to the hand. So with the hand, you know, usually when I do some pieces and there's something in the foreground, in the middle, that's where you got most of the detail and most of the crispness. But, you know, the hand is supposed to be an ethereal sort of misty thing. So I didn't want to put anything in the background of that hand out of focus, because then it would just blend together, right? But also didn't want to make it sharp either. And I think I tried that, and I got some feedback on it. Said we needed to be more misty, you know, like
That was Cameron. Yeah.
it's like, which is cool because for me, feedback and criticism is good because it just kind of fine tunes what you're asking for instead of just, all right, I'm done. Here you go. You know, I want to make sure that, you know, you're satisfied with it. So the more you can pick it apart and tell me what you would rather have in there, I think the better it can turn out. So I think I did like 3 or 4 versions of that hand until it finally got to where it was wispy enough, and then you could still recognize it as a human hand, but it's still sort of cloudy, right? So in the background of that, you've got the bookshelf and the books on the floor, and then the papers flying away. So it's a contrast. The background is detailed there, but then the hand isn't. Whereas with the man in the corner, he's detailed and crisp, but the background there isn't. So it's just a way to sort of focus on a particular thing, like wherever you want your attention. You got to make sure that everything there is not at the same focus level, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it worked really good with this piece because it was an enclosed setting, and you've got something going on in the middle. You got the background stuff. You've got papers blowing all over the place. You've got a table with papers, and all that stuff can be used to layer the piece, where you've got foreground, middle ground, background, and then you've got more background outside. So I think it came together pretty well. And, you know, a lot of pieces, you know, would be an outside shot. You can't do that too much with those because you got a lot of background stuff. If you're making a landscape and everything's happening way back there somewhere, you can't experiment with those really close objects and then the middle objects and then the background ones. But I was able to do that with this one. and I think it turned out the way that I hoped it would. So this right here, right? This was actually in your cover.
Oh,
No
nice.
way. That's
So
awesome.
it's the cup that was laying on the floor, because Quentin had emailed me, and when he emailed one of the versions of that drawing, there was an annotated version and there was a non-annotated version. So the annotated version, it had the sketch on there or whatnot, and had like a wine glass tipped over in a chalice, right? And I was like, I don't have a chalice. And I'm looking on this shelf. I'm thinking, okay, I think I do have a chalice, but it's a real small silver cup. And I think I've had it probably since I was like 3 or something, and it's all tarnished and whatnot. But I said, that would be kind of cool to put it in there. So I based it off of this thing.
If I may ask, how did you go about picking a lot of the colors for a lot of these? Kind of that process, because I know we had like the idea of the blue being kind of a concept, but you have such a like variety and depth of them, and how you were able to like give it definition, And I was just curious on how you kind of picked that out, I guess, or is it just kind of like a feel it out kind of thing, I guess?
I think I started feeling it out once I got the black and white version to where I wanted it. So I always do pieces starting in black and white to get the lighting, contrast, the attention, and then try to figure out, okay, what color is it going to be? So, some of the pieces that I've done are really colorful. It's not a natural scene a lot, because a lot of tech death and death metal aren't, you're not dealing with regular everyday events. So, and people will ask, can you make the colors pop? I'm like, okay, all right, I'll do that. I don't have a problem with it at all. But sometimes I like to do more toned down things. So in this case, we're dealing with the interior of a building, with some classical style. I wanted to make sure that overall, when you look at it, you get you can point out different colors, but for the most part, it's a cooler sensation. Plus it's at night, it's indoors, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't have anything like this really loud purple over here or some orange over here, because then it just gets too busy. You want to try to get the mood right, and there is some orange and some red, but I think it's more subtle. Even without hearing the music, we were emphasizing that it should be at nighttime. Okay, I usually equate night with a nice blue or some other toned down darker color. Definitely not orange or red, because that reminds me of the sun. But that's pretty much how I decided. Okay, let's make everything sort of around the same hue. And I still have a version, I think, that's not as blue. But after, this was like in the later stages of it, after tweaking everything, that the blue works pretty good. And I think that was a suggestion from one of you guys, actually.
Yeah, that Cameron, who isn't here right now, he was like, we need like a blue like overcast to kind of like go with the hand and like give everything kind of like an overall like tint, I guess, like to I guess synesthetically convey like a feeling associated with like a color scheme, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's that. I believe that's why we had the suggestion. Yeah, because I like the version without all the tint as well. Like I was more fine with that, and then I get the feedback from the band saying, it needs like to have this, overall saturation. And I'm like, but why? Like it.
Right, and I don't disagree with that either. A lot of stuff that I've done has been multiple colors, And I don't know how at the end it even works sometimes because there isn't an overall hue. But then I look at album covers that I'm just instantly drawn to, and I start noticing that okay, most everything on this cover is it's around about the same kind of tone, the same hue. So that worked out really good in this case. And I've only done a few like that. Most of them have been just crazy, sort of outlandish combinations of things. A lot of times at the band's request. So if you request it, that's what you get. You know, I might have a suggestion in there, but overall, like it's up to you guys and up to whoever's asking. So I just try to make sure I give people what they ask for. Taste.
For sure. If I may ask, who are some of your artistic influences, or things that may have, or artists that may have influenced this piece specifically?
So, particularly with this piece, I'm sure that you guys listen to your fair share of old black metal, but probably the most notable black metal artist that there is out there, he's been dead for years, is Gustav Dore or Dore. I don't know how to pronounce the last name, but he was a Flemish artist in the 19th century, and he did a lot of, well, he didn't actually engrave himself. He did the drawings for the engravings, but from what I read about him, he had a photographic memory, and he literally would draw on these tablets that people would etch out. So he's probably the most influential artist for this particular one because he did a lot of extreme lighting and shadow in his work. You can pick up a book by him and just, it doesn't even matter if it's if he's illustrating the Bible, Paradise Lost, Dante's Inferno, it doesn't matter. It's that same quality of contrast, extreme light, usually from one source, and then extreme shadows, and it kind of makes more of a dynamic piece. So I've been looking at his work for like a really, really long time. So that would be probably the most the person who had the most influence on this one. And of course, you got to throw in the modern, I call them the modern artists, modern masters of there's so many of them though, but from your Dan Seagrave, Paul Olson, what's the guy's name? He actually works for Wizards of the Coast.
I think I might know who you're talking about. He does like all the Dungeons and Dragons like illustrations.
Yes, he name's on the tip of my tongue. I look him up all the time. Raymond Swanlin. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, he's incredible stuff. And sometimes I just browse through that guy's folder, like I'm never gonna get this good. But really good. So yeah, I wanted to look at a few older artists' pieces too. So I've got a book down here. It's one of those oversized coffee table books that you buy from Barnes and Nobles, like near the front. Yeah, you got. I've got a Baroque, like a book of Baroque artists back there, and some neoclassical artists. And I wanted to kind of use those as a frame of reference because back then, the way that they lit their pieces, it was all single source lighting. So you've got that, bright, dark. They weren't really experimenting with backlighting and then light coming from three directions, and it was pretty intense, sort of to the point. Here's a central figure, and I don't think that this cover necessarily looks like that, but it was definitely it was an influential factor. Caravaggio was one that he was a master at having a small light source and focusing it on the main theme of the painting. Just incredible. Like he's got one painting don't remember the name of it, but it's in this book, and it's actually like a painting of a candle, and the flame is shooting straight up, kind of flickering a little bit. There's a woman in there, and the rest of the picture is slightly illuminated, but it's mostly dark. But everything that you see on the woman is just coming from the candle flame, and I always thought that that was very effective. So that's one. I tried to do it a little bit in the Ire Uprise piece with that candle sitting there and the flame blown that way. But I don't think that I was I didn't do it the way that he did. And plus I didn't want to confuse the lighting situation too much and have, got your candle light here and then there's a blue light there and you got shadows going all over the place. We'll put the candle flame in there, but I don't want to make it too complicated like that. So.
I personally appreciate that because like all of my favorite art is like usually single light source, like really intense like contrast, like black and whites are like usually very very like far apart from each other as far as like saturation, and like I really felt like there was a lot of light definition that's kind of like subtle in the piece, I guess, like where the illumination hits in the room, like you really get a sense of that space because you see how it's illuminated from that light source.
So I actually had a couple questions that were asked of me because I posted your piece on Reddit on a bunch of the art subreddits, and they had a couple questions that they wanted to know.
Really?
Yeah. So I take the first big basic question. So you used Photoshop, I take it, as your main software for this?
Yep. That's it. Yeah. And I've never actually experimented with any of the other ones. I've heard there are some good free ones out there, but again, because of my schedule and home life and other responsibilities, sometimes it comes down to free time. And I learned Photoshop pretty quick back when I got it, when I got this digital setup here. I think I took like an afternoon and just screwed around with it and then did some things. So that's what I usually use for everything. And it's easy, it's pretty easy, but that's it. So no mishmash of other programs.
One of the other questions that they had asked was because I also showed like the comparison between the two, is that they wanted to ask, what was your first impression of the crappy sketch? Like,
you know what? Like sketches, well, to me, like I would never call one crappy because they have all this info in it, like even if it's just a stick figure drawing, you've got, okay, if somebody sends a sketch, that's great, right? Because at least I have an idea of like where they want stuff. So for me, my job is to make sure that you get what you want the way that you envisioned it. So if I don't get a sketch, which is no problem, right? I have to try to figure out with trial and error what this person wants. So I love that sketch because everything was already there. You had the door / window. Whoever drew it, who actually drew it?
yeah, I mean, because I don't know, we were in the room coming up with the concept and everything. It's like, who wants to draw it? Nobody rose their hand, so I'm like, I guess I'm gonna draw it.
The first thing I thought was, oh, okay, sweet. The arrangement's already there. Great. Here's the guy down here in the corner. Window's going to be here. You got a bookshelf over here. The only thing that I had to figure out was, is the perspective going to be looking down at the room? Is it going to be at room level? Are you going to be looking up from like the floor and have the the angle lines kind of going up like that? So that was the first thing I had to figure out. After that, everything was pretty much I left most of the things in the same place, minus some perspective changes, but yeah, I was very grateful for that. I think the only thing that I didn't put in there was probably the curtains. I think they were curtains in the original one. And I was like, okay, we can do like a French door type scenario. But if we do that and I put curtains in there, we've already got doors, and then there's the background behind the doors. So I didn't want to crowd it too much, and then I didn't want to cover up some of the architectural background with curtains, because they probably would have, they might have worked, but I was thinking, no, let's just leave it bare.
I think if I remember correctly, the original intent of the curtains was just to try and capture as much of like the sense of motion and movement
Right.
within it. And I basically said like I would be willing to forsake it if like because you had the papers and all these other things. It just
and the glass.
we as long as it felt like a sense of motion and a force was emanating from the door because of its entrance. And you did a really good job of like just capturing, almost like it was like the perfect shutter speed for a camera, and you could just snap it. Like it was like mid motion. It's great.
And and it's funny you said that, because I was thinking about, okay, depending on what kind of camera existed in this unspecified time period, like should the doors be blurred, or should they just be like a still door? So I'm thinking, okay, if they're blurred, that might present a little bit of a problem, So I was thinking, well, if the doors are still and there are no curtains, how am I going to capture the idea of movement in this area and disruption, right? Because somebody said, make it look like the still room was disrupted. So I was like, well, how am I going to do that? All right. So then there's the papers. That helped a lot. But then there was also the glass. And I was thinking, well, the glass doors slammed open. Like, the glass would probably break, right? Yeah. So let's make the glass break. And that kind of helped, because it kind of allowed me to put some of the light and the highlights in there, and not have it just, okay, here's the hand and then there's the background. You've got these little pieces of shards of glass that are reflecting some of the light going on. And then it kind of helped too. You start with a lot of pieces, and then as you get farther away from where that event's happening, the pieces get more and more spaced out. So it kind of leads the eye away, even though it's not moving, like that's what your brain is going to think, because they're floating, So how are you supposed to convey movement with objects that aren't moving? Space them out. This happened before this, and this happened not too long after this. Kind of like the Big Bang. You look out, you can tell where something began based on the proximity of the pieces that are in there. So I try to do that with glass. And the papers too. There's a somewhere in there, I think it's in the background, there's a stack of books, and there's some papers blowing off the books. So got a lot in one area, and then there's maybe a page here, and there's another one like way back there somewhere. And then on the foreground table, the same thing. So I like that, because I haven't done that in a long time in a piece of work, to try to make so many things move or get knocked over or whatnot. Down to the guy's hair, blowing hair. Can't remember who it was, but somebody asked for that too. They said, yeah, he looks cool and all, but can he have like longer hair? Like, he's bald, he's got that like peninsula thing going on, bald spot, but
the like skullet or whatever it was, I don't know, like something or other. I don't know. Maybe it was just like another thing. Like we just wanted that sense of motion and movement. That's probably all it was. It was just like, and then also old man, maybe unkempt, probably. No idea.
Getting drunk, reading about mysteries and whatnot. But it was good that we put that in there, because it only helped with the sense of disruption. So I tried to use things that could become either dislodged or moved. So we were talking about that candelabra up at the top. The flames on that were being moved up and to the left, and then the smoke too. Same thing with that candle at the bottom. It's like, all right, what direction is this stuff going to go? So you got his clothes, his hair, candle flames, glass, papers, goblet, doors. So I think it all came together pretty well.
Hell yeah, man.
And it, since it was sort of an enclosed environment, it was cool to try to put as much in there that you could see like it's possible. Like, okay, if my window here just all of a sudden burst open, like what kind of books coming out all over the place, my clothes are probably gonna be blowing. So it's not very often that I get to work with that much detail or information. So thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, man.
For asking me to do that.
Like we're glad we gave you a new or an opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Like you knocked it out of the park, man. I keep saying that. Like I've only heard positive things out of your piece, like everywhere, and that what you'll appreciate this since you said you like the Dungeons and Dragons guy. I had a guy come up to me at a show a couple days ago. And he says, "I love your art so much. It looks straight out of like a Magic the Gathering card." Like, yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Like, and I haven't done one like this either for a band. I've done some drawings, for myself, but not illustrative wise. So every time I get to do something, it's a new experience because everybody wants something else. It's like, all right, let's see if we can pull this off. And so far, it's happened. But this was a first. And I kind of knew that going in. I was like, all right. Even before we got the drawing, and then we got the drawing, I was like, all right, cool.
So, to kind of like get like a timeline, like how long did this entire thing take from sending the original concept to final product, would you say, if you can remember?
Oh man, let's see. I think I started actually sketching it out in late October or early November of 2018. And then so Thanksgiving came and went, Christmas came and went, albums of the year lists popped up all over Facebook. That came and went. And then you've got, so January, I think after January, I started again. I don't remember exactly what month it was that it got finished. I want to say it was sometime in the spring. And I'd come back and work on it a little bit. Once I got that black and white version kind of down, it was like, then it was all downhill from there. But it took a little bit, took a little bit of time to get that. And that's, weekends or time that I'm not at work or on the road. We take a computer to the hotel, take a night, I don't have to cook, sit there and do that. So it probably a couple of months if I had to put all the time together. Probably a couple of months, Monday through Friday, weekends off.
Well, it shows, man. It definitely looks like this wasn't something that you did real fast. Like, it took time. It took, like, a lot of man hours, I'm sure. Like,
yeah, a lot of that stuff was just doing by hand, like those pages, like the pieces of paper, like, all right. I couldn't tell you how many Google images I was looking up, just typing in flying paper. Like, trying to figure out what does this even look like? And there was some good reference pictures there. So I'm like, all right, I got to get a piece of paper that is going to angle like this, but the light's coming from over here. This Google image, the light's coming from way over here somewhere. So there's a lot of trial and error trying to hand draw a piece of paper floating, in the air and make it look convincing. And then there's a shadow from the paper. Like, well, okay, that's cool and all, but like, how's it going to fit in with the rest of this piece? Oh, that's right. It has a shadow. Who would have known? Totally forgot. Now you got to put the shadow in there, And I try to put some details in there, like there's a stack of books back there on the floor. I threw the books in there, and I'm thinking, I'd take a picture of it, put it on my phone. So when I'm at work, I'm like looking at this picture, trying to find things to pick apart. And I was like, something's not right about these books. Like, oh, that's right. There's no reflection. Put a reflection in there. So now you look at the floor and you can see the books like mirrored on the floor, like the doors, a little bit, and little things like that. So it was cool to kind of notice things and try to make it exist in real space, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
So I actually have a lot of artist friends that really dug what you did, and that they asked me to ask you if you have any advice for any aspiring artists that are wanting to get into the industry and stuff like that, like in your approach on working with clients, especially with this kind of changing times,
Mm-hmm. So I still consider myself an aspiring artist, and it's kind of humbling to get asked that question because I don't see myself as an expert or anything. I'm always trying to learn something new, trying to be better at the next one after the one that I'm on, and so on and so forth. But to answer the question, I think the best advice that I could give is, number one, be versatile. Like you said, a lot of things are changing. Be versatile in your style if you can. There are a lot of artists do make it by doing a signature style. And so then you put your work out, fans will see the work, or whoever's buying it, right? And they'll say, okay, I want a piece from this guy because he does this kind of work. And it works as long as the work is good and it's coveted, right? But if you really want to grow, even in your own style, be versatile and try to make work in other styles too. If you're a gore artist versus a landscape artist, switch them up and coming out of your comfort zone and then noticing things that will make your landscape better. When you go back to your own style, you've kind of picked up some things that you may not have because you're sitting in your own comfort zone. It's almost like a musician playing a different style of music. You're going to pick stuff up just because you're in a different environment. So I would say, one, be versatile and don't be afraid to try something that you may not be comfortable in. And if you stick it out and you observe everything around you and you put it into that piece that you're doing for the first time, it's going to come out being better than you expected. So that's going to teach you to observe, notice, take in, and then apply something to something that you can't do with your eyes closed. The only way that you really are going to grow in anything is if you come out of what you're used to. You might be able to play the guitar with the hands behind your back, but somebody can do that somewhere. But if you want to take it to the next level, try to play a classical piece, or play some jazz. But as far as art goes, that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is be versatile, but also try to learn something new every day in whatever medium you practice in. I paint in Photoshop, but I also try to make sure that I'm watching tutorials, instructional videos, and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that, I got to watch a tutorial because I'm not good enough. No, no one's good enough. Like everybody can get better at something that they're doing. But a tutorial vid on something like Photoshop is just going to teach you how to use the tools more effectively, and it's going to teach you how to save time. You might not need to take half an hour to do something that you can do now in like 3 minutes, you know? So it's time saver. Tools can help you, and there's no such thing as cheating when it comes to stuff like that. You know, they're there for a reason, you know? And you look at a finished product, no one's going to shame you for, you know, for using a filter or using a blur tool. You know, there's not a set of laws or a police academy saying, "Hey, I noticed that you use a blur tool for that." It's like, I just,
we're
no
the shop police.
no one's gonna do that. So I would say don't be afraid to do that. And thing number 3, for me, what helped is illustration. So there's a bit of a difference between art and illustration. Illustration is a form of art, but art isn't necessarily always illustration. So if you're creating a piece of art that you thought of and you put it out there and it came from your mind, that's one thing. And that, again, that goes back to comfort zones. If you're illustrating something, you're taking the idea of somebody else and you're trying to make it into something that's visual. You know, you're taking it out of one format, which is information or words, and then you're putting it into another. And for me, it helped because it kind of forced me to say, all right, I got to take this and take it in, process it, and then regurgitate it. So, you know, before I started doing this, I did, you know, I was doing a series of graphite drawings, and it was pretty easy, but they weren't ideas that came from somebody else. They were just my own ideas. But when I started taking in other people's ideas, it was more challenging. And I think it allowed me to grow a lot more and to notice and observe things. And then, you know, I don't always think it's going to work. You know, I'm sitting here like, how am I going to do this? Like, or I get stuck on something, but it forces me to work through it and eventually come out on the other end. And anytime you got to work through something and you have to really kind of dig in there and find whatever it is you need to get this done, that just equates to growth in the end. So those are the things that I would suggest to anyone who wants to get into this kind of thing.
Okay, last question, my dude. How can people reach you? We want to pimp you out, bro. You're a phenomenal artist. We want to know how people can get in touch with you, get you some work.
The easiest way is Facebook, honestly. It is the most free, effortless thing that's helped me get in touch with bands. And actually, like, probably about 95% of my work comes from there. It's just, you know, somebody releases an album, there's an image, there's the name, there's a link, there's another link, and then there's the message button. It's like, hey, how's it going? Got a question, you know, what do you charge and could you do this? And that's how it always happens. I don't have a website. I had one, but nobody ever went to it. So I took it down. Everybody's on some social media thing. I have an Instagram page too. It's not as interactive. So, you know, anyone can find the Instagram page. It's just Art of Justin Abraham, all one word, no spaces. Everything on there is released and older. I don't post any in-progress pictures of anybody's work because a lot of times that stays under wraps. And right now, I've only got time to do illustrations. So there's a little bit of personal work. I had a couple of things on there. It was a project actually that the band broke up, and I had made these concept drawings of these heads that were radiated, and I never finished them. So I said, well, you know what? I got permission from the band. And I was like, hey, like, I'm never going to come out with this. It's just sitting in a hard drive somewhere. You mind if I like flesh them out and post them here and there? So there's a couple of them on there. And then you can find them on the on my personal page too. But besides that, most everything is illustrative work. So again, there's stuff that I can't put on Instagram for that reason. But there's, I got a lot of stuff in the oven right now, and when I can put it on, I'll put it up. So if anybody's interested, Instagram and then Facebook, you can either go under my name or there's an Art of Justin Abraham page on Facebook too. So, and I think there's only one other Black Justin Abraham, but it's just Justin Abraham. So my middle section, I don't think there's another person that has that same sort of acronym in there. So if you find that, that's me, and just send me a message. Even if you don't want any art, send a message. We can chat about life or, existence, Baroque architecture.
All right, man. I think that's it for the interview part. I want to thank you again for doing this. This was amazing.
I appreciate it, though. No, really. Thanks for all the positivity and the kind words. I appreciate it, man.